Try that.
How about now?
Uh-oh.
Can everybody hear me now?
Everybody hear me now as well.
Can you hear Marguerite?
No, my headset's not working. Hold on
Okay.
a second, folks.
So we've got me. We haven't got Marguerite quite yet. Hold the phone, folks.
Give me just a minute.
I will be performing a Christmas Carol through the medium of seated interpretive dance.
Hang on a second. Oh, what's gone wrong?
It's all right. We're just doing science.
It no likey. Huh. Well, it might not pick up my headset tonight. That's okay.
Has your headset been turned on?
I'll wake it back up. We're going to give it one more try. Sorry, everybody.
Not poems and rubbish. Science. Doing formulas and shit. It'd be great.
Oh, what happened here? Oh, I thought I tested this and everything. It's not picking up my headset.
This is not picking it up at all, is it?
Hang on. Excuse my reach. Flexibility, reach.
It's an instant Mass Effect. There we go.
Instant Mass Effect joke here.
Zol, you're saying we can hear you both, but I suspect it's probably coming in through that.
How about now?
Oh.
Are people seeing my... Oh, yes, they are. Now people
Oh,
are seeing
okay.
my headset.
Okay, here we go.
Let's see how they sound. I'm going to go back to my little spot now.
We
Hopefully
just hit some hype 100%. Outstanding.
Okay,
it is... I'll do that again. Doesn't this look great? Marguerite has excelled herself once again with the incredible new festive layout. As you may be able to tell through a variety of subtle hints, it turns out that we're doing some Christmas stuff for the month of December. And specifically, we're doing from little-known indie cult classic author, the Chuck Palahniuk of his day, Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol.
Hold on a second.
The mic's gone again.
How's that? Is that back? Oh, yeah. Okay. I see what's gone wrong. Never mind.
So, who can hear who at which point?
Should be able to hear Alistair.
Both yay.
And now you should be able to hear me as well until I mute myself. And Alistair coughs in my ear. That's lots of fun.
That's because I love you.
I love you too. Third time's a charm.
Okay.
Try one more time.
Brilliant.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. Welcome to the first of the Christmas streams. For those of you who've been here before, you know pretty much what to expect. For all of you, welcome. We have people here from the Isle of Man, from America, from York, from the Rusty Quill, from Magnus Archives, from Pseudopod, from all over the place. All of you are incredibly welcome. For the next 2 hours, there will be reading and shenanigans and general nonsense, and it will be great. Never, Jim, never. We will never stop being cute. Never. For those of you who are new, hi Mer, by the way. The show is normally broken down into 3 parts.
Hi, Mer.
At the top...
And hi, Jim. And hi, Fiona. And hi, dogs, while I'm at it.
Yes. At the top, we have a monologue. And basically the monologue... Margaret's now gone for her tea. We'll be right back. At the top, we have an opening monologue, which is the trailers, wherein you get a chance to get comfy, get some food, get any water that you might need, get your meds, get any pets squared away, all of that good stuff. And also to remember your tea. Remember your tea, folks. In the run-up to the monologue, we showcase some excellent fan art. In this case, Socks and Sandals Casual Peter by Imperio, which I really, really love, by the way. To the extent I was looking at that going, do I need white and red socks?
Please no.
Please
no socks and sandals. No.
Then we'll check in with what's new with us. We will provide a visit with the Chungus, and then we'll dive on into the story. This is burly. This first stave is about 7,000 words, so that's going to be about an hour all by itself, I would have thought. That was me asking you.
I'm sorry, say that again?
This first stave is about 7,000 words,
it's
isn't
about, but I think it's 66,000, so there will definitely be a break in the middle of the story. And like at the top, there will be a 60-second countdown when we come back from the break, so everybody will be able to look at the screen and go, do I have time for a cup of tea? If you don't see the timer, you have at least 60 seconds. If you do see the timer, you know exactly how much time you have.
Not 66,000, 6,000, don't worry. It's all good. And then there'll be some shenanigans, and then we'll sign off. So, onwards to the opening monologue. The opening monologue done this week by... He's pretty much the house band at this point. The magnificent Nate Crowley, also known as Frog Croakley on Twitter. And this is a thread he put together about crabs and cooking.
You might want to click on the link in the chat there, folks, because
There are visual aids.
There are visual aids for this one.
Sometimes to relax, I look up how chefs prepare weird fish. Last night I saw a geezer prep a giant isopod. I was expecting a nice surprise, where it was full of fun meat, but no, it was full of sloppy grey hell, like you might expect in the innards of a ghastly benthic scavenger. There will be food discussion here, which may gross folks out. Content warning. Content warning, isopods. Internals of isopods.
We're also getting a heads up that the link isn't working for some reason.
Okay.
Let me try again. Hold on. Here we go. Revise link.
Compost is just saying if you click the link and it 404s, delete the bracket off the end and it works.
My mistake. Sorry, folks.
That's cool. Thanks, Compost. And I'm so glad to see you here today. Hope you're doing all right. Here's a giant isopod. It's the size of a moderate loaf of bread and is essentially a woodlouse, but consigned to the frigid abyss of the ocean floor. I actually reckon they're quite aesthetically satisfying, like most crustaceans, but there's also something really unnerving about them. What's quite interesting is that while we think of woodlice as insects, they actually are just these scuttly horror men who have found a way to keep their gills wet inside a hard shell and started implausibly living in the woods. Look up close and there's subtle difference. Love that thing where you realise some bit of shared morphology between two animals and you're like, oh yeah, that's just a mashed up version of that other one. Another classic in crustacea, the ventral triangle on a crab is just a lobstery tail that has long since folded under the body.
I think that's a visual aid I didn't need.
While we're at it, ever seen a hermit crab without a shell? Bad news. It's got horrible worm bum. That's because it's less a crab, taxonomically, and more like the tailed decapods, lobsters, etc. Its tail has lost its hardened shell, hence the hiding in hollow objects thing. Then you've got the coconut crab, the biggest land arthropod, and my second favourite animal, who is a hermit crab that has reacquired bum armour, but only partially. You can see the abdomen is leathery underneath. Young coconut crabs even shelter their bums in shells, like hermits. Sorry, I was meant to be studying kanji, but I seem to have procrastinated by banging on about crustaceans for a full hour. While I acknowledge that literally no one asked to see a crab's bum, I do hope it has been of some use to you.
From the mind of Nate Crowley.
From the mind of Mr. Nathan Crowley. Yes, indeed. Hello, folks. Welcome to the show. This is the Chungus. The Chungus is well, as you can see. There is a costume for A Christmas Carol for Chungus, which, due to the vagaries of postal distribution in the country, did not quite arrive on time this week. That just means there will be costume epicness next week. Don't worry.
It's not your fault, Wendy. Don't worry.
It's not you, Wendy. It's all good. Chungus has their little scarf in case they get cold. It's fine. Also, the Audioverse Awards, on which about all the very nearly Magnus Archives Rusty Quill folks are up for awards in various capacities, closes on December the 5th, which is in a couple of days. I'm up for Best Peter Lucas. Possibly not the name of the category,
Close.
but if you haven't voted and you would like to, please do, because that would be great and I would really appreciate it. As to what's new with me this week, weird week. December is always a month which, even in a year where there isn't a global pandemic, always seems slightly panicky to me, because we always try and take the back 2 weeks off in December, which means because I am sometimes not good at these things, I decided it would be a really good idea to get 3.5 weeks of work done in 2.5 weeks. And that's pretty much where we are right now. By the end of the month, I am hoping to have completed 5,000 words of articles on Stargate, a piece on Old Gods of Appalachia, I think, for someone else, 4 issues of The Full Lead, a beta read for somebody, and a full awards jury discussion for one of the awards juries I am on. So there is an awful lot going on, and I'm bad at taking a break. So I have been...
Zelia is very correct. You do, in fact, need to take more of a break.
I do very much need to take a break.
Tell everybody what you've been doing to take a break this week.
I have been playing frequent bouts of Katamari Damacy.
Which he's never played before.
Which I've never played before, and I'm getting up to 5 meters now on the 12 meter level. I'm not getting there quick, but I'm getting there, and it's really starting to turn a corner. Plus, I finally finished Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so now I just have the DLC to do. And that is at least partially and a thing which I've been kind of playing out and thinking that we'd be able to step across to Assassin's Creed Valhalla and a shiny new PS5. And that's going to be in February.
Yeah, if we're lucky.
But it is what it is, and we're moving on. But no, it's a busy week, and for a couple of days it was kind of very stressy, and then suddenly in the last 36 hours, suddenly you start to see the end of projects and start to see stuff getting put down, and that's always really, really good. So I am doing okay. How are you doing, hon?
I'm doing all right. It's like you say, it's been kind of a strange week. It feels like, well, Thanksgiving was last week, and at least in the U.S., lots of people kind of take that as downtime. And now it is the first couple of weeks of December, which is always the very frenetic, get everything done for the year so we can take a break. And I think it's going to be worse this year because people who can't carry over their vacation time have to use it, which means there's a lot of pressure on people these 2 weeks. So frequent breaks. I mean, I've been doing a very poor job of actually taking my fun hour every day this week. But
Every day we're like, you know what, how full, we're going to down tools and have fun for half an hour or for a full hour.
But on Tuesday we went out for a walk and had tacos. That was
that
good.
does count.
Yeah. And the stream is now very shiny, so that counts as fun.
It does. So yeah, that's about where we are. Yeah, December stress possum. It's very much a thing. And enforced relaxation is something which we are embracing, perhaps a little too hard.
I've been trying so hard not to sing the Katamari song on stream.
Na 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 Katamari Damacy.
See, you can get Alistair to sing. You're not.
You're
Gonna
welcome.
Sing.
We really shouldn't keep English literature
Okay,
waiting
Scott.
much longer, should we?
No, Dickens can wait. The story has been in publication nonstop since 1843. It ain't going nowhere. I'm talking about tacos with Scott. Back off. Scott, there is a Taco Bell. Just one, but it is across the street from my house. And it does takeout, and it is like my sacred pilgrimage right now. It just doesn't have any green chili sauce.
What Marguerite's not telling you is that for the longest time there was a Taco Bell in the country, in Sheffield. We took road trips.
I've been there twice.
And then one day we were walking home and I heard, and Marguerite ran across the road and stared at this planning permission thing. And it said Taco Bell.
Yes, Jax, it's across the street. I've been stocking it since its planning permission went up like a year and a half ago.
It is one of the major reasons we still live where we live.
It's my favorite American fast food is Taco Bell. Dude, for sure.
Oh, Niblick, I'm really sorry about the vertigo. I hope it passes soon. Have you ever taken me to Denny's?
You've had a moons over my hammy. Remember, you made all the horrible jokes about it.
How could I forget that I'd eaten moons over my hammy?
And we've, of course, went at like 2:30 in the morning because that's when only civilized people go to Denny's.
Also, Olive Garden, the fountain of breads.
Yes, there was the fountain of breads. Horrible Denny's. How many horrible Denny's jokes do you have?
Off the top of my head right now, none. But at the time, I think I was a constant fountain of nervous
sure
2:30
you
in the
were.
morning
I'm
creativity.
sure you would. We'll have to go back and let you restock. I'd rather go back to like the Eastern Midwest so that we could go to, oh God, what's it called? The place I always go at Gen Con. Steak and Shake.
Steak and Shake.
Steak and Shake.
Del Taco, thoughts?
Del Taco is not as good as Taco Bell. It's too dry.
I should also point out that a burrito place has opened about half a mile down the road.
Burrito. Please put that in the biggest possible air quotes you can imagine.
And hand on a stack of Bibles, Marguerite has walked the entire length of their shop frontage doing this.
Maybe.
So
Well,
yeah,
we gonna talk about Dickens?
we probably should talk about Dickens.
Okay. Why don't you give us a little bit of introduction to Dickens?
Okay, Dickens is one of the greatest and most well-renowned authors in English literature history. Stave one. I'm kidding. No, there's He's actually a really interesting cat in a couple of quite interesting ways. And one of the things I've been doing for this is starting to dig into his history and the impact that he's had on fiction and why it looks like it looks. Strangely, one of the best possible people to talk about regarding Dickens is an actor called Simon Callow, because Callow is a Dickens scholar and has played him on several occasions, most notably in Doctor Who episode The Unquiet Dead, which also notably features the first appearance of Eve Miles as the first of the many versions of Gwen Cooper that would show up across Doctor Who. Dickens was a pulp guy. If he was writing now, Dickens would have novels in airport bookshops. He would be next to Brad Thor and Tom Clancy.
With giant neon covers.
With giant neon covers. The best analogue for the impact that Dickens had on fiction, I think you could find in the modern era, is probably Terry Pratchett. In that he was one of fiction's rock and roll stars. And as Possum pointed out, he was also kind of a dick, because a lot of them are.
How do we spell Steve Callow?
Simon Callow, Callow.
First name Simon. Can
Simon.
you give us some titles off the top of your head?
Hold on. I will.
I literally need like the thing from the old 60s Batman symbol now that says, to the internet.
Well, he's written a book about him. Simon Callow, it's called, imaginatively enough, Charles Dickens by Simon Callow.
I'm looking it up right now to put the link in the stream.
And has also, played him on several occasions, including a slightly weird situation where he did an audience with Charles Dickens, where he basically had people hang out with him in character.
That sounds weird.
Very much so. Acting is a curious profession.
Yeah. There we go.
But yes.
There's a copy in the thing. You should probably talk about the content warnings for this particular story.
Yes, I should, because there are some. I also apologize for not mentioning the best content warnings we will ever have for the opening monologue, which are naked hermit crabs and bum armor. The content warnings for A Christmas Carol are Victorian morality, or the lack thereof, haunting, and of course, accents.
So many accents. I made him a key so he can keep track of the various
because
accents.
you are amazing.
And they're all going to be horrible, Cockney Victorian.
It's horrible white men. It's horrible white men all the way down. It's great. Shall we?
I'm ready if you are. Let's remind everybody to just get comfy, get a drink, attend to any medications.
Make sure your pets are squared away.
Get yourself a stream snack.
Save
all that
your game.
Good stuff.
Yell, "You're not my dad, Galactus Trexel, Katamari Damacy," if you're me.
He does the voice of the King of Cosmos.
It's Trexel.
The Trexel voice. It's very disturbing.
Ah, yes, the present. I was going to get you one. Dropped it somewhere. Never mind. David.
Moving swiftly on.
And now, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Fiona is excited to hear my fake British accent. Superb. Hi, Fiona. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, his sole mourner. and even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. If we were not particularly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night, in an easterly wind, upon his own ramparts, than there would be in any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot. Say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret, self-contained, solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red. His thin lips blew, spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head and on his eyebrows and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days, and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him, no wind that blew was bitterer than he, no falling snow was more intent upon its purpose, no pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely. Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. That was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, in fact, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold. It was bleak, biting, foggy weather, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warn them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been light, truth be told, all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighbouring offices like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without that, although the court was of the narrowest, the houses opposite were mere phantoms. To see the dingy cloud come drooping down, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by, and was brewing on a large scale. The door of Scrooge's counting house was opened that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and so, surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of a strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle," God save you, cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach. Bah, said Scrooge. Humbug. He had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog and frost, this nephew of Scrooge's, that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome, his eyes sparkled, his breath smoked again. Christmas a humbug, uncle? Said Scrooge's nephew. You don't mean that, I am sure. I do, said Scrooge. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough. Come then, returned the nephew gaily. What right have you to be so dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough. Scrooge, having no better answer ready on the spur of the moment, said, Bah, again, and followed it up with, Humbug. Don't be cross, uncle, said the nephew. What else can I be, returned the uncle, when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older but not 1 hour richer. A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you. If I could work my will, said Scrooge, indignantly, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should. Uncle, pleaded the nephew. Nephew, returned the uncle sternly, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine. Keep it, repeated Scrooge's nephew, but you don't keep it. Let me leave it alone, then, said Scrooge. Much good may it do you, much good it has ever done you. There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, returned the nephew. Christmas among the rest, but I am sure I've always thought of Christmas time when it has come round. Apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time. A kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and will do me good. And I say, God bless it. The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded. Becoming immediately sensible of the impropriety, he poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. Let me hear another sound from you, said Scrooge, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You are quite a powerful speaker, sir, he added, turning to his nephew. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. Don't be angry, uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Scrooge said that he would see him. Yes, indeed he did. He went the whole length of the expression and said that he would see him in that extremity first. But why? Cried Scrooge's nephew. Why? Why did you get married? Said Scrooge. Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love, growled Scrooge, as if that were the only thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon. Nay, uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I will keep my Christmas humour to the last. So a Merry Christmas, uncle. Good afternoon, said Scrooge, and a Happy New Year. "Good afternoon," said Scrooge, slams the door. "I said good day, sir." His nephew left the room without an angry word, notwithstanding. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially. "There's another fellow," muttered Scrooge, who overheard him. "My clerk. 15 shillings a week. Wife and family. Talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam." This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands, and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge, or is this Mr. Marley?" "Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years," Scrooge replied. "He died 7 years ago, this very night." "We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner," said the gentleman, presenting his credentials. It certainly was, for they had been 2 kindred spirits. At the ominous word liberality, Scrooge frowned and shook his head and handed the credentials back. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up a pen, "it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and the destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries, hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir." "Are there no prisons?" asked Scrooge. "Plenty of prisons," said the gentleman, laying the pen down again. "And the Union workhouses?" demanded Scrooge. "They are still in operation." "They are, still," returned the gentleman. "I wish I could say they were not. The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigour, then?" said Scrooge. "Both very busy, sir." Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course," said Scrooge. "I'm very glad to hear it." Under the impression that they, under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, returned the gentleman, "a few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices." "What shall I put you down for?" "Nothing," Scrooge replied. "You wish to be anonymous. I wish to be left alone," said Scrooge. "Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas. I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have previously mentioned. They cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there. Many would rather die. If they would rather die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Besides, excuse me, I don't know that." "But you might know it," observed the gentleman. "It is not my business," Scrooge returned. "It's enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen." Sensing clearly that it would be useless to pursue their point, the gentleman withdrew. Scrooge resumed his labours with an improved opinion of himself, and in a more facetious temper than was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened, so that people ran about with flaring links, proffering their services to go before horses and carriages and conduct them on their way. The ancient tower of a church, whose gruff old bell was always peeping slyly down at Scrooge out of a Gothic window in the wall, became invisible, and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds, with tremulous vibrations afterwards as if its teeth were chattering in its frozen head. The cold became intense. In the main street, at the corner of the court, some labourers were repairing the gas pipes, and had lighted a great fire in a brazier, round which I'm going to do that again, because we don't drive past comedic mispronunciations in this dojo. In the main street, at the corner of the court, some labourers were repairing the gas pipes, and had lighted a great fire in a brazier, round which a party of ragged men and boys were gathered, warming their hands and winking their eyes before the blaze in rapture. The water plug being left in solitude, its overflowings sullenly congealed and turned to misanthropic ice. What a lovely turn of phrase! misanthropic ice. The brightness of the shops, where holly sprigs and berries crackled in the lamp heat of the windows, made pale faces ruddy as they passed. Poulterers' and grocers' trades became a splendid joke, a glorious pageant, with which it was next to impossible to believe that such dull principles as bargain and sale had anything to do. The Lord Mayor, in the stronghold of the mighty mansion house, gave orders to his 50 cooks and butlers to keep Christmas as a Lord Mayor's household should, and even the little tailor, whom he had fined 5 shillings on the previous day for being drunk and bloodthirsty in the streets, stirred up tomorrow's pudding in his garret, while his lean wife and the baby sallied out to buy the beef. Foggier yet, and colder. Piercing, searching, biting cold. If the good St. Dunstan had but nipped the evil spirit's nose with a touch of such weather as that, instead of using his familiar weapons, then indeed he would have roared to lusty purpose. The owner of one scant young nose, gnawed and mumbled by the hungry cold as bones are gnawed by dogs, stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol. But at the first sound of "God bless you, merry gentlemen, may nothing you dismay," Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and even...
I'm sorry, that's gonna be it.
And tonight's special guest star, Spindle.
Please continue. Forgive me.
At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived, with an ill-willed Scrooge dismounted from his stool and tacitly admitting the fact to the expectant clerk in the tank, who instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose," said Scrooge. "If quite convenient, sir." "It's not convenient," said Scrooge, "and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound." The clerk smiled faintly. "And yet," said Scrooge, "you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work." The clerk observed that it was only once a year. "Poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December," said Scrooge, buttoning his greatcoat to the chin. "But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning." The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no greatcoat, went down a slide on Cornhill at the end of a lane of boys 20 times in honour of its being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as fast as he could pelt, to play at Blind Man's Buff. And I have reached the take a break warning.
This is, in fact, a pretty good place for you to take a break. Did I understand that correctly? He's wrapped up in a blanket. He doesn't even have a coat.
My understanding is Bob is basically in a blanket,
But
yes.
he's never named. He's only called the clerk in this first stave.
Yeah.
So the, quote, main character, that, or at least the POV from the very end of the book, and certainly the Muppets movie,
Hell yes.
is never even named. How fascinating. And yes, please don't ever... I don't know. That does, in fact, sound like Spindle's origin story. Should we take a quick little break here, and we'll give it a few minutes?
Everybody go refresh your drinks, do what you need to do, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
We'll be back in just a couple of minutes, folks.
Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy set of rooms in a lowering pile of building up a yard where it had so little business to be that one could scarcely help fancying it must have run there when it was a young house, playing at hide-and-seek with other houses and forgotten the way out again. It was old enough now and dreary enough, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge, the other rooms all being let out as offices. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. The fog and frost so hung about the black old gateway that it seemed as if the genius of the weather sat in mournful meditation on the threshold. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place, also that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London, even including, which is a bold word, the corporation alderman and livery. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner earlier that afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any immediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not in impenetrable shadow, as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air, and though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. That and its livid colour made it horrible, but its horror seemed to be in spite of the face, and beyond its control, rather than a part of its own expression. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled, or that his blood was not conscious of a terrible sensation to which it had been a stranger from infancy, would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key he had relinquished, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He did pause, with a moment's irresolution before he shut the door. He did look cautiously behind it first, as if half expecting to be terrified with the sight of Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall, but there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on, so he said, "Pooh, pooh," closed it with a bang. The sound resounded like thunder. Every room above, every cask in the wine merchant's cellars below, appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Now, Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door, walked across the hall and up the stairs, slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. Scrooge is indeed a pooh. You may talk vaguely about driving a coach and six up a good old flight of stairs, or through a bad young Act of Parliament, but I mean to say you might have got a hearse up that staircase and taken it broadwise, with the splinter bar towards the wall and the door towards the balustrades, and done so easily. There was plenty of width for that, and room to spare, which is perhaps the reason why Scrooge thought he saw a locomotive hearse going on before him in the gloom. Half a dozen gas lamps out of the street wouldn't have lighted the entry too well, so you may suppose that it was pretty dark with Scrooge's dip. Up he went, not caring a button. Darkness is cheap. Scrooge liked it, but before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough of the face to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa. A small fire in the great spoon and basin ready, the little saucepan of gruel. Scrooge had a cold in his head upon the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual, old fire guard, old shoes, 2 fish baskets, washing stand on 3 legs, and a poker. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. And double-locked himself in, and that was not his custom. Thus secured, Against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed, nothing on such a bitter night. He was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it before he could extract the least sensation of warmth from such a handful of fuel. The fireplace was an old one, built by some Dutch merchant long ago, and paved all round with quaint Dutch tiles designed to illustrate the scriptures. There were Cains and Abels, Pharaoh's daughters, queens of Sheba, angelic messengers descending through the air on clouds like feather beds, Abrahams, Belshazzars, apostles putting off to sea in butterboats, hundreds of figures to attract his thoughts, and yet that face of Marley, 7 years dead, came like the ancient prophet's rod and swallowed up the whole. If each smooth tile had been a blank at first with power to shape some picture on its surface from the disjointed fragments of his thoughts, there would have been a copy of old Marley's head on every one. Humbug, said Scrooge, and walked across the room. After several turns, he sat down again. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell. A disused bell that hung in the room and communicated for some purpose long forgotten with the chamber in the highest story of the building. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. That might have lasted half a minute or a minute. It seemed like an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun, together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Scrooge then remembered to have heard that ghosts in haunted houses were described as dragging chains. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. "It's humbug still," said Scrooge. "I won't believe it." His colour changed, though, when, without a pause, it came on through the door and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leapt up as though it cried, "I know him! Marley's ghost!" and fell again. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling like his pigtail, and his coat skirts and the hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long, wound about him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, heavy purses, wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard it said Marley had no bowels. He had never believed it until now. No, nor did he believe it, even now, though he looked the phantom through and saw it standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, and marked the very texture of the folded kerchief bound about its head and chin, which wrapper he had not observed before. He was still incredulous and fought against his senses. "How now?" said Scrooge, caustic, cold as ever. "What do you want with me?" "Much." Marley's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you? Ask me who I was." "Who were you, then?" said Scrooge, raising his voice. "You're particular for a shade." He was going to say "to a shade," but substituted this as more appropriate. "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Can you sit down?" asked Scrooge, looking doubtfully at him. "I can." "Do it, then." Scrooge asked the question because he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair, and felt that in the event of its being impossible, it might involve the necessity of an embarrassing explanation. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it. "You don't believe in me," observed the ghost. I don't," said Scrooge. "What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?" I don't know, said Scrooge. Why do you doubt your senses? Because, said Scrooge, a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There is more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart by any means waggish. The truth is that he tried to be smart as a means of distracting his own attention and keeping down his terror, for the spectre's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. To sit staring at those fixed, glazed eyes in silence for a moment would play, Scrooge felt, the very deuce with him. There was something awful, too, in the spectre's being provided with an infernal atmosphere of its own. Scrooge could not feel it himself, but this was clearly the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, its hair and skirt and tassels were all still agitated by the hot vapour from an oven. You see this toothpick? Said Scrooge, returning quickly to the charge for the reason just assigned and wishing, though only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from himself. I do, replied the ghost. You are not looking at it, said Scrooge. But I see it, said the ghost, notwithstanding. Well, returned Scrooge, I have but to swallow this and be the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug! Humbug, I tell you. At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. But how much greater was this horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round his head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, and its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. Mercy, he said, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me? Man of the worldly mind, replied the ghost. Do you believe in me or not? I do, said Scrooge. I do, I must, but why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me? It is required of every man, the ghost returned, that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide, and if that spirit does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turned to happiness. Again the spectre raised a cry, and shook its chain, and wrung its shadowy hands. You are fettered, said Scrooge, trembling. Tell me why. I wear the chain I forged in life, replied the ghost. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Scrooge trembled and trembled more. Or would you know, pursued the ghost, the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmases ago. You have laboured on it since. It is a ponderous chain. Scrooge glanced about him on the floor in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing. Jacob, he said imploringly, old Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob. I have none to give, the ghost replied. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me! In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. It was a habit with Scrooge, whenever he became thoughtful, to put his hands in his breeches pockets. Pondering on what the ghost had said, he did so now, but without lifting up his eyes or getting off his knees. "You must have been very slow about it, Jacob," Scrooge observed, in a business-like manner, although with humility and deference. "Slow?" the ghost repeated. 7 years dead," mused Scrooge, "and travelling all the time, the whole time. No rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse." "You travel fast," said Scrooge, "on the wings of the wind. You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years," said Scrooge. The ghost, on hearing this, set up another cry, and clanged its chain so hideously in the dead silence of the night that the ward would have been justified in indicting it for a nuisance. "Oh, captive bound and double ironed," cried the phantom, "not to know that ages of incessant labour by immortal creatures, for this earth must pass into eternity before the good of which it is susceptible is all developed. Not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life opportunity misused, yet such was I. Oh, such was I." "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob," faltered Scrooge, who now began to apply this to himself. "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." It held up its chain at arm's length, as if that were the cause of all its unavailing grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground again. "At this time of the rolling year," the Spectre said, "I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings, my eyes turned down, and never raise them to that blessed star, which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me?" Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the Spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly. "Hear me!" cried the ghost. "My time is nearly gone." "I will," said Scrooge, "but don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob, pray." "How is it that I appear before you in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day." It was not an agreeable idea. Scrooge shivered, wiped the perspiration from his brow. "That is no light part of my penance," pursued the ghost. "I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer." "You were always a good friend to me," said Scrooge. "Thank you." "You will be haunted," resumed the ghost, "by 3 spirits. "Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?" he demanded in a faltering voice. "It is." I think I'd rather not," said Scrooge. "Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. "Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over, Jacob?" hinted Scrooge. "Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake you remember what has passed between us. When it had said these words, the spectre took its wrapper from the table and bound it round its head as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound his teeth made when the jaws were brought together by the bandage. He ventured to raise his eyes again and found his supernatural visitor confronting him in an erect attitude, with its chain wound over and about its arm. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. When they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up its hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped. Not so much in obedience, but in surprise and fear. For on the raising of the hand, he became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out, and the air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together. None were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He'd been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell. But they and their spirit voices faded together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and, being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or perhaps his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, Scrooge went straight to bed without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant. And that is Stave 1.
There really are some zingy one-liners in there, aren't there?
He's a solid comedy writer, which is the thing no one ever remembers. It's by the way, the chat did successfully corpse me with the it's not good right now for me to be haunted. Can I just do a Zoom call?
Can we do a Zoom call all at once? By the way, why is Jacob Marley's ghost a Dalek?
I had 2 choices with Jacob, because traditionally he shows up and he's like, "Hello, Scrooge, you're fucked."
Content warning swears.
And the 2 choices which I was kind of thinking about were either that he shows up and he's really happy, because it's like, your turn, motherfudger, or that he's forgotten how to do human. And I thought it would work a little bit better if he was like, yeah, talking, not really done that for 7 years. And I have some emotions where this guy is concerned.
But I've totally been stalking you, by the way.
Yeah, I have sat next to you many times.
Get out of my room.
Thanks, Jacob. You should get that looked at. Stop it!
He does sound like Davros. I absolutely agree. But, yeah.
I'll have my frozen assistant call your people and we'll do lunch.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, exactly. So, talk a little bit about the overall structure. There are 5 parts.
Yeah, basically, there are 2 traditional structures in a lot of Western narrative of any media you care to name. And the first is the 3-act structure, which is the kind of thing of promise, turn, and prestige. You know, it's here's the thing that's going to happen, here's the surprise thing that's going to happen, here's the ending. The 5-act structure is a little funkier, and that's something which Dickens uses here to great effect. Weirdly, so does the vast majority of American series drama. Because the 5-act structure, as I understand it, and I am a talented amateur in this field, is the standard 3-act structure, but with an epilogue and a prologue on each end. So you have setup and establishment of stakes, which is what we've had tonight. You have the arrival of the first ghost and Scrooge coming to realize that this is in fact all the thing, which will happen next week. You have the arrival of the second ghost, which will probably be Brian Blessed. Let's be real, usually is. And Scrooge having his little Grinchy moment. And then the arrival of the third ghost, where Dickens will bring the feelings, and Tiny Tim will, have a really bad time.
But he only gets like one line, so.
He does. And then the epilogue, which is the,
By the way, I still totally want Tiny Tim to be Werner Herzog.
Tim, you've been shot. It was an insubstantial bullet. It's unnecessary. This week I actually had reason to watch the first Jack Reacher movie again, and a sizable portion of that was the moment halfway through where suddenly, so who's the gang boss? Hello, my name is Vanna. What? Apparently he did it in return. It was basically you show up in this movie and we'll finance one of yours. And he totally got into it. He loved it. Chris McQuarrie, the guy who directed those and who then Cruise would go on to brand and forced to make Mission Impossible movies until the end of the world, was talking about how, no, Herzog was on set a lot. He had suggestions for stuff.
I love the idea of Werner being kind of like Mads Mikkelsen. He just wanders around Hollywood and people give him scripts and he just throws himself into it, right?
That which reminds me, I saw a trailer today for a fantastic looking new movie called Riders of Justice, which is a mismatched Danish buddy comedy in which Mads Mikkelsen is asked to come home from the war because there's been an accident and he's lost family members in it. And then he's approached by 3 erratic mathematicians who have proof that this was not an accident. So it is basically Mads as every character Liam Neeson has ever played, and 3 mathematicians. And there's the one moment in the trailer which just sold me was, obviously he's got a warehouse for them to operate out of. He's talking to these 3 guys going, okay, so it's probably this group. How possible is it for you to get me all their names and addresses without you being detected? And one of the scientists just busts up laughing for 30 straight seconds. And he's like, it's really easy for you, isn't it? Yes, it is. I can hurt you, right? I'm sorry. And it just seems to be 4 Danish idiots in a car just accidentally fighting crime.
What's the name of this movie?
Riders of Justice. It's out in a couple of months.
Oh, this is such a you movie. The only more you movie we've seen a trailer for recently is, what is it?
Jiu-Jitsu.
It's a Nicolas Cage movie.
Okay. So, once every 6 years, a comet passes the Earth, and it opens a portal, and this warrior, poet, alien, samurai comes through it.
Who looks nothing like a predator, honest.
And then, every 6 years, highly trained martial artists who are specialists in jiu-jitsu, even though the forms they're using...
Didn't it all fall out of a movie of Mortal Kombat?
Are clearly not jiu-jitsu, must battle this alien, and if he dies, then we win, I don't know, space or something. And if they die without honor, he'll butcher everyone on Earth, but if they die with honor, then he'll go, alright, thanks then, and go back through the portal. Yet warrior, poet, alien, samurai. It's
as much plot as you can expect from a Nicolas Cage movie. Speaking of Nicolas Cage movies, there's this new one that's just been announced where apparently Nicolas Cage has to play himself in other movies. It's gone full John Malkovich.
Yes. And the clear implication is the bad guys are also playing incarnations of Nicolas Cage from other Nicolas Cage films.
Heaven help us.
I will drop the trailer for both Jiu-Jitsu and Riders of Justice into the Twitter thread.
For our sins.
For us. For my sins.
Can we have some shenanigans now? I think this totally, absolutely calls for shenanigans.
Some shenanigans. Okay, so our first shenanigans comes to us from Cryptid O'Clock. And this is a...
Yeah?
This is a comic with Martin and Elias and Peter. So the first panel is Elias and Peter, with Elias saying, He's probably just as reliable as Martin, because it usually takes you an afternoon to get back to me. Sometimes I think he holds on to faxes. And Martin's saying, I don't care what they say about me, I just want to eat, which I realise is a lot to ask for at a dinner party. Later, Martin, I hope Elias didn't do anything to the food. Like what? I can't prove it, but I think he might be trying to poison me. And then the last panel is Peter yelling, that is a $200 plasma screen TV that you just killed. Good luck paying me back on your $0 salary a year, plus benefits, baby.
Try that again.
This is a $200 plasma screen TV you just killed. Good luck paying me back on your $0 a year salary, plus benefits, babe.
It does say 200. It doesn't say 2,000. Wow, that's a cheap TV.
With Martin and Basira both going, run, just run, in the corner. It's very well done. And also Martin's cardigan is smashing.
Oh, really?
It's a really nice cardigan, yeah.
Okay. The premise of that one is, what if the Magnus Archives did the dinner party from The Office?
Oh, that's why I don't get the joke, because somehow I've never seen the American version of The Office.
Yes, we have. There was a food video. Babish did the meal from The Office dinner party. I think that's as much of that episode as we've seen.
Yes. And I believe it's all on Prime at the moment. And it is... I'll report back.
Yes. See, that officially counts as the type of thing where I would give you $5 and a chocolate bar and send you off to the cinema to enjoy by yourself.
Okie dokie. This is along the lines of that time I came up to you really excited and went, hey, all the VR's on Channel 4's box sets now. And you were like, yeah. All 15 years of it.
Help yourself. Help yourself.
We also have I Ain't Dead with simply Peter Lucas, a.k.a. Sir Not Appearing in This Archive.
That was for me, basically.
That was basically for me. Say that again. That was fun.
Peter Lucas, a.k.a. Sir Not Appearing in This Archive.
I like that one.
And the last one is the Penumbra podcast, but if it was written by Hetz... there's too much overlap in the character names between TPP and TMA, and I keep seeing your posts mention Peter as a femme fatale and mentally assume it's talking about Peter Lucas, and that's just a hell of a mental image. Anonymous, these blogs are supposed to make the source content worse. Femme fatale Peter Lucas is actually better than regular Peter Lucas.
I expect to see TikToks.
No lie detected.
I expect to see TikToks of femme fatale Peter Lucas within the 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Have your homework on my desk by Friday.
Yes, Mom. So that's pretty much what we've got for you, folks. Peter Lucas with eyeliner. I've done eyeliner. You don't need to see me in eyeliner.
It's okay. It doesn't work as well for you with the glasses, unfortunately.
No. That's pretty much what we have for you tonight. On Sunday, we will be back between 10 and 12, playing another couple of hours of the beautiful and completely heart-rending The Last Campfire, which is a really, really lovely game. Mm-hmm. And possibly a very short one. We may finish it this week. If not, it'll probably be next week.
I don't know how many parts it is, but we went through one part on Sunday. So I would imagine it's probably 3 or 5 parts. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's what we're playing right now.
So we have that going on, and then we will be back here next week on Sunday with Stave 2 of A Christmas Carol.
Exactly.
Do we have anything else in the week that we need to be aware of? My Enthusiasm episode's dropping.
That's correct. This Friday, your episode
Toast
of
Profesh.
Enthusiasm, I totally forgot about that, will be out, which is you discussing...
Community. It is Bryn, Anil, Helen, and I talking Community, and appropriately enough for an episode about one of the best sitcoms ever made, we cover a lot of ground in relatively little time.
And Wendy is absolutely right. You will be feeling all of our feels for us, and everybody in the stream loves you for it.
Thank you, folks.
Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
I spend a lot of time thinking about the metaphor of trying to thread a needle in a lot of different ways. I am physically a very large human being, I'm also a very intelligent human being. And I know a lot of the time people only see one of those things. And I also know an awful lot of the things in my life that have caused detriment to me have been where I have focused on one of those things, and to the detriment of the other. And I am a relatively middle-class, university degree-educated English white guy. The vast majority of my emotions were sealed underneath a metal plate at the bottom of my soul for 35 years. And an awful lot of the last 10 years or so of my life has been about realizing that's incredibly unhealthy. And it is incredibly unhealthy. And, I mean, it's been interesting looking back across the video games we've done on the stream across the course of this year, because a surprising amount of them have had a surprising amount of emotional heavy lifting involved. And that's great. That's sincerely really great, especially in a medium where, you know, the latest big release is Ronald Reagan wants you to do war crimes. To be able to have stuff with the kind of emotional resonance of stuff like Beyond Blue or Concrete Genie is really cool. And I've got an awful lot from those games. It's still rough sometimes. And like going back to threading the needle, I always worry that it doesn't come across as genuine. And it always is. I don't cry prettily. It's just
That's okay.
And you know, it's not an aesthetic choice or anything. So much of my job, so much of every aspect of every one of my jobs is about directly facing a piece of art. You know, what does that do to me? What does that tell me? And if I'm not honest with myself, I can't improve. And I just always try and approach this stuff honestly and with tissues. So, thank you. Thank you very much for reassuring me that this works. And not in that kind of cynical way, but in that it's a genuine response. Thank you. The fact that you're all like, no, you feel this stuff, so we know it's okay to, is that means an awful lot. Cheers, buddies.
Apparently, you're also in the Magnus Q&A that dropped on Patreon this week as well.
Oh yes, I am. I keep forgetting that.
Is that the one where you were given a list of questions?
Yes.
I'm gonna have to go download that one.
Yes, that was really good fun, especially as there are several questions in there where I suspect my answers were not what people were expecting them to be.
Of course not.
In particular these. So have you ever had any supernatural experiences? Yes! Which ones would you like? I'm always reminded there's a very old now, very good, utterly squalid BBC sitcom called Bottom, which is basically Waiting for Godot with dick punches. And one of the main characters is at one point has successfully conned some money out of a customer. He's like, yes, just make the check payable to Edward Elizabeth Hitler. And the guy looks up, laughs, he goes, any relation? And Eddie goes, yes! And that's always made me chuckle. I don't know why I thought of that just now. Oh, you see, Baltimore's has to... The Twitter stream's going to be really weird tonight because there's the Riders of Justice trailer, there's the Jiu-Jitsu trailer, and I also have to put the end credits from Bottom in there because they're one of my favourite ever things.
I think you should also show the stream the cute little stuff thing that arrived this week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is this mine? This is mine.
That is yours. That is correct.
So Marguerite got us these. You want to explain what they are?
I don't know what they are. They're just cute little...
These are cute little pseudopodia, and they're kind of mood tentacles. Because when you're having a bad day...
Exactly. One of the pseudopod slush readers was talking about them, that she needed one for when she's reading slush, so she can have like a good story and a bad story. And then I found them, and so it lives with us now.
I'm just going back through the chat because I wanted to credit someone with this.
Oh yeah, I have one. I have one too. You can show mine.
Beastrogen, thank you. You just put the other
What was the other?
thing that I want to put in the Twitter stream in there. Rick Mail, who was one half of Bottom, who did Grim Tales, which is him in an ambulatory Baba Yaga chair telling folk stories.
Is this that absolutely bizarre end credits thing you showed me? That
With klezmer music.
It was so weird.
Here's
It
Marguerite.
was so. See, mine of course is in Hulk colors. Because if I'm green, it's not a good sign. But if I'm happy, then it's a happy color. Yeah, that one's mine. What do you want from me? They were like, buy 2 get 1 free, so we got 3.
Yes.
Oh, now you have to explain what klezmer music is.
Klezmer music is, if I remember correctly, Hungarian native music, which I must tread carefully, is a very acquired taste. There is, I'll make another note, the best possible proponent of klezmer
This is amazing. Alistair's going to have like half an hour's worth of homework to do for this stream notes.
I can recommend for you is a guy called George Raab, who is a podcaster. He's a skeptic. He's
Thanks
very,
for the reminder, Jax.
he's very, very funny, and he's also a professional drummer in a klezmer band. George is also responsible for the Netflix sketch, which I heard a decade ago and which still surfaces from time to time and still makes me laugh. I will drop a link to his stuff in there and to klezmer music, because that's how we do these things now.
Because that's what our stream notes wind up looking like. Shall we go ahead and wrap it up?
I think we probably should. Thank you so much, folks.
Everybody, please do stick around for at least a couple of seconds of the end credits, because we have a second piece of music for you that I want
Yes, we do. And oh my God, Ryan has excelled themselves.
Quick, I have to put a link to the music.
And I'm now going to vamp whilst Marguerite carefully puts that together.
Yes, exactly. Quick.
By the way, if you need music commissioned for anything, or indeed an editor, Ryan is extraordinary.
Ryan also writes for Rank and Vile, I believe, and we've linked to their SoundCloud page.
Yes.
And they've got a whole bunch of other music up there as well for podcasts.
Oh my God, Rank and Vile is my favorite horror podcast that isn't the Magnus Archives or Pseudopod, because Ryan and the team have decided to review every horror movie ever made, and it goes exactly like you think it does. It is the podcast that taught me the term goofster. Their Killer Clowns from Outer Space episode is one of the best things I've ever heard. Their Hellraiser episode is superb. Their Freddy vs. Jason one, especially the details of how originally that was a legal drama.
I'm sorry, what?
There is an early draft of Freddy vs. Jason, which is a court case, which at one point has Jason in chains in the court, where a pivotal moment is whether or not the judge is going to allow the case to be heard at Camp Crystal Lake.
Why didn't I get that movie?
I know, right?
Oh, I'm so sad now. Okay, we've said goodbye like 12
Thanks,
times.
Ocean.
I think we should actually say
And
goodbye
thank
now.
you, everybody. We really will go this time, we promise.
All right, have a great one, everybody.
See you next time.